I first started teaching at Wharton, I thought I was a strategy guy. I didn't know anything about business ethics. I didn't know anything about the field or who the people were, but because I thought business and ethics ought to go together. I didn't know that most of the people who did business separated them into business and ethics. I've always seen myself as somebody who had something to say about business. And because I'm trained as a philosopher, I had something to say about ethics. But again, I didn't know that business and ethics were separated to the extent that they were. I thought it was nothing but complete common sense that companies created value for customers, suppliers, employees, communities, people with the money. I didn't think that was very radical or even really very interesting. I was trying to figure out what business was. That seemed to me to be it. And I didn't know that I had anything else to say, quite honestly.
What were your initial goals and expectations?
There came a time in the mid-'80s as I learned more about the field of business ethics that I thought we needed more ideas. We needed more people who were trained in philosophy, but who actually knew something about business. I had spent 5 years doing essentially consulting with companies all over the world, and it was quite an education for me because I didn't really know much about how business worked. But as I read a lot of the material in business ethics, it became clear to me that there were lots of folks who didn't know much about business who were writing about this. And so that became one of the kind of driving forces for me, was how you put a real practical knowledge about business and good thinking about ethics together. I taught at Wharton for 5 or 6 years, part-time initially, and then as an assistant professor. But I never taught business ethics there. I was a strategy guy. I then moved to University of Minnesota, who offered me tenure, and I started to teach business ethics. It was by this time, it was like the mid-1980s. It was a pretty standard course that was in the business school there. I started to write more for people in business ethics, since quite honestly remember I thought I was a strategy guy, the strategy people didn't care at all. I've never thought of myself as having goals and expectations. There was a bunch of work I wanted to do. I wanted to write about stakeholder theory in the sense that business people could understand it, and in the sense that people who do business ethics and social issues and management could understand it. So really, I say I've been a pretty resilient one-trick pony for 40 years. Resilient in the sense that I don't really care if people take this seriously or not. It's work I feel like I have to do. If I look back and say, well, gee, so what's the last 40 years been about? I think I'd have to say I've just been a voice that asks people to think about customers, suppliers, employees, communities, people with the money, and a voice that asks people to think about not separating business and ethics. So if I had to name those things, I would say they were stakeholder theory, for which I get too much credit. I didn't start this, and there are lots of people who have done it. I just happened to write, it turns out, a very citable book about this. It's got lots of citations. People have said to me, so what's it like to write a business bestseller? It has like 35,000 citations. I tell them, I don't know, because they only printed 2,000 copies, and we gave most of those away. My take on this is I wrote a very citable book, but it's not a very readable or book that's been well read, right? And so I think stakeholder theory is one thing. The second thing would be this idea called the separation fallacy, that business and ethics are separate and should be separate. I think ultimately that's probably more important than thinking about stakeholder theory. And we'll see what comes of that, because I think business as a field has moved towards, in kind of the wrong direction, towards more pseudo-scientific ideas. As a philosophical pragmatist, there's no contradiction between thinking about empirical research and thinking about conceptual research. In fact, those things are always intertwined. Yet we make those distinctions in the business disciplines in a way that I think prevents really interesting work from being done. Of the thing I think I am most proud of the last 40 years, that's easy for me. I've had some terrific students, and to be a part of their career and what they have accomplished, they'll do far more than I ever have. There are a lot of questions around what's knowledge in business, and questions that eventually led me to read and reread people like Dewey and Rorty and Putnam and the pragmatist. And then there were lots of questions about ethics and how we think about ethics. I used to put that as, what is there, how do we know, what are we going to do about it? You know, those questions I saw as questions that philosophers had not a monopoly on answering, but they had some skills in trying to answer those questions. But they needed to be answered with a knowledge of real business. Is doing business ethics a new profession is an interesting question. Business has been around, since before, we lived in cities and all that sort of stuff. People have been value creators and traders for millennia. The interesting question here to me is, first question of political philosophy has always been, how's the state justified? Well, it's supposed to be changed then. Suppose the first question of political philosophy were, how's value creation and trade possible? And then we ask, so what's the role of the state? We might get some really very different answers for that. You can look at someone like Plato or Aristotle. They both had views of business. Plato's view, especially on leadership, is extremely relevant for business today. Dominic Scott at Oxford and I are trying to write a book called something like Plato on Leadership. And we've sort of taken Plato's ideas, his metaphors of leadership, and kind of mapped them into both leadership theory and some business leaders of today. And it's very relevant stuff. I dare say, this is going to come out wrong, I know, but I dare say it's almost as interesting as the leadership journals. If I think about it for a second, the questions about ethics and corporate responsibility, I don't think they're settled, but I think one thing is settled. Corporations have a moral responsibility to their stakeholders. I think that's pretty much a settled question. It certainly is in business. Most business leaders that I know understand this. They don't always get it right. And one of the problems with the field of business ethics is we engage in what I would call saints and sinners thinking. Most businesses are sinners because money's bad and profits are bad, or at least that's what many people in the field believe. But there are a few good companies. And then when those few good companies screw up, they're sinners. Oscar Wilde put this best when he said, every saint's got a past, every sinner's got a future. We need to get out of this saints and sinners thinking. There are very few saints. In the next 20 years, business ethics ought to be a really exciting field to be in. We have incredible new technologies. If you think about it, I've never been much fan of trolley problem thinking in ethics. But the problem of autonomous cars is a trolley problem. If you think about the ethics issues in things like AI, you think about privacy, you think about what kind of human beings are we going to be when most of our face-to-face is mediated by screens? How are we going to be able to form relationships? How are people going to be able to fall in love? I think those questions about who we are as human beings in this, we're on the edge of this incredible technological society. And Plato's still relevant. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's got to be grounded in real business, real technology. It's got to be grounded in a variety of thinking about ethics. And we can't keep having these saints and sinners, facts and values, those kind of distinctions, which don't help us very much.